Uh, this is going to sound like a familiar refrain here, but I grew up in a Christian home. Uh, my parents, I think they obviously did the very best that they could. We weren't well off as a family, but as kids, we never knew that. We never knew we lacked anything. Certainly no trips to Disneyland, but it was a good childhood. I grew up on a farm, loved the farm still. I think I love the work. I love the solitude. I love the fact that you can get stuff done. It just feels good. Um, Never been able to really put my finger on why, but for some reason, I've always strived to do well. Um, yeah, to show that I was a success, to show that I can make it. I don't know if it was sibling rivalry because I have an older sister, an older brother, and a younger brother, or whether I just never felt good enough. I don't know what it was, but that's something that's always been kind of innate in me is just a drive to do well. The other thing I've always done is I've always rebelled against Christianity. So even though I grew up in a Christian home, um, I kind of felt like it was a requirement to do and say the right things. But honestly, I never really felt the truth in my heart. I know it would break my mother's heart for her to hear me say that, but that's the truth. Um, I think because of that, I can pick out a phony immediately. Like if somebody's just using the Christianese language, that just drives me around the bend. There has to be some substance behind it. Um, I think because of that too, I also learned how to manipulate people to get what I wanted. So I've changed a lot over the year. You don't know the Dale from 30 years ago, and he was a pretty selfish, manipulative kind of guy. Um, yeah, I was very competitive. I still am very competitive, and I can be pretty intense and focused. So I think if you combine that with just this selfish nature that I had and this desire to achieve, I didn't have a whole lot of regard for people. So all you blues out there probably don't understand that, but that's just people were a means to an end, not they weren't people. So yeah. So now that I've kind of exposed myself, I met Glenda in high school. Uh, I was so attracted to her, man, and I think it's because she was the total opposite of me. She was authentic for one thing. She was kind. She was caring. She was just opposites attract, and we were opposites. We married. You can guess it was a pretty rough road for her, mostly because I was oblivious. Um, I was just such a selfish person. I wasn't a great husband. I was just looking out for me. We had kids young. We have two boys. Many of you have met them. Justin, whose birthday it is today, um, is 34 today, and Tyler is our youngest, and he's 31. Uh, Tyler lives in Vancouver, single. Justin is married, lives in Calgary. Uh, so we had kids young. Right away, I turned my attention to my career, began to work my way up the corporate ladder as a banker. I did well, actually, quite well. I was in my early to mid 20s, and I was already in mid-level management. I had like 30 direct reports. I managed over $500 million in assets. This is 30 years ago. So like $500 million is a lot of money now. It was a lot of money back then. Um, some reason Glenda never gave up on me. She always supported me. She's the one who truly led me to Jesus, like the real Jesus. I owe everything to her. So about 25 years ago, so like 10 years into my career kind of thing, I grew tired of really restless about chasing a career. We were constantly uprooting our family um, and moving for the next promotion. Like, how about 13 moves in 9 years? Like, just insane. Um, One common thing is I always found myself getting worked up about injustices. So I would take on people's causes, Um, if there is some sort of injustice involved, that would get me fired up and get me behind it. Um, yeah, God was working on my heart, that's for sure. The thing of it is, though, I couldn't reconcile my Christian values that I was developing with my career aspirations. So the tipping point came for me in the bank, anyways, when I was asked to fire two people. And um, I just hired these two people. They had moved their families from Saskatchewan to Calgary, and I was asked to fire them because my income to labor ratio was off. And I remember I was so mad because I had negotiated this prior to even hiring him, knowing that this was going to be the case. And I really felt betrayed by the bank. Um, so instead of firing Bevan and Laurie, I left. I quit. And I remember I even got a call from the CEO trying to change my mind, but that's once my mind was made up, it was just done. Um, so feeling God was calling me to His service, I did what most people would do. I got an MBA. Uh, Wait, that's not what most people would do, is it? No, most people would probably go to Bible school, but I got an MBA. And honestly, I really felt that this was what God was asking me to do. Um, I was then, and I still am convinced that business can facilitate the gospel better than anything else. I went to work for a venture capital firm while doing my MBA. Best, most interesting job I ever had. I loved finding new technologies with ideas to fund and support, connecting people together to make something work. Um, but I soon grew discontent with this too, and I realized that my values, the values of our board, and nearly everyone I worked with, I mean, venture capitalists generally are fairly selfish people. So you'd think I would have fit in well, but I was changing. Um, our values were not the same. I've learned that money isn't everything. Um, so I finished up my MBA, and that at that time, is Mark on today? Mark Hutchison? No? Okay. I can talk about him then. I went to work for a company called Blessings Christian Marketplace. I was absolutely thrilled that now I can meld my faith and my work into one. I thought, that was just a real great opportunity. So I was excited about it. I go to work the first day. I'm sitting in the CEO's office. We were a national chain, 30 some stores all across Canada, doing about $30 million in revenue. CEO, I sit in his office and he slides this piece of paper over to me, and you can just kind of imagine that um, this paper just kind of he flings it across the desk and it kind of twirls, and I just remember this so clearly. It lands right in front of me, and it's a petition into bankruptcy. And I just left like a really good six-figure job that I loved because I wanted to follow God's call in my life. And here I found out that it was not what I thought it was going to be. Um, CEO was so stressed that that afternoon he was actually under doctor's orders. He couldn't wait for me to get there because he was under doctor's orders not to work anymore, and he just up and left. And so here I was, my first day on the job. I had like 350 employees, and we were bankrupt. I had to figure out how to make payroll. I had to figure out how to keep the doors open, um, all in the space of like a week. Uh, we ended up, I ended up hiring a lawyer, and we beat the bankruptcy petition, but it was only beat on a technicality. Um, we weren't technically bankrupt at the time, the exact day that they petitioned us, and that's how we beat it. But we were very, very, very bankrupt. So yeah, that was good experience, as they say. Um, Along came Mark Hutchinson, whom we all know, and if anyone can turn around a business, it's Mark. I tried to convince him not to buy the business, just to let it go bankrupt and then pick up the pieces. And that wasn't Mark. He didn't feel right about that. He didn't feel that was the thing to do. And he bought the whole thing, um, believing that he could turn it around. Working at Blessings and working with Mark was a real time of growing my faith. He taught me so much just about how to be a good person, how to be um, how to think of others, how to be energetic, how to make things happen. So it was good. It was very, very good. I remember we were in Calgary and we were supposed to move out. The company had no money to pay for us to move, but we decided we were going to move anyways. That this is what God wanted, and um, I remember making that decision. And I hate to think what would have happened if we would have said no. We're not gonna stay. Financially, we would have been probably $100,000 better off not to have done that. But we did, and it was definitely the right thing to do spiritually for us. Um, Blessings was the biggest mess I've ever seen. It took 2 years to unwind the books to figure out where the company actually stood. Uh, we didn't have a good Jerry there. Uh, After we restructured Blessings, I didn't have work because we restructured it to a very small company. I was recruited to a large Canadian ministry here in the Valley. My job was then to restructure their operations and help them turn around kind of a tenuous financial situation. I remember asking them if they were prepared to listen to the voice of someone from outside academia, and they kind of thought, "Yeah, it'll be a challenge for us, but we recognize that there's a big difference between your thinking and how we think, but it's what we need to do to move ahead." Well, I had a 3-year contract. I managed to last 3 years or 2 years. I was, and the thing that I've learned is I'm just amazed how twisted things can become when people are faced with pressure. How, yeah, how lines can become blurred, then they become crossed. How the ends can justify the means, and these are good people, yet they still fall into these um, difference of values and difference in ethics, and just trying to save yourself the things that you'll do. So that was another thing that I've learned is you can't put your faith in people. You have to put your faith in Christ Jesus, because people are people. Anyway, um, I ended up leaving there when I could just no longer support the activities and the accounting methods that they employed. The president was eventually fired over the situation that I brought to light, and years later, I actually received an apology um, from the incoming president who took over. So that was really good for me, because I'll tell you, that whole time was the hardest in my life. Like being a whistleblower, that put an end to my career. It really shook my confidence, and I've that was 10 years ago, and I've struggled with that ever since. Struggled to get my confidence back. Lost my mojo, I guess. um, but God used that. He uses everything in our life to teach us, and what He has to tear down, He builds up. So I was reeling from that whistleblower experience. the only work that I could find was the exact same thing I did when I was 21 years old. So I was in my, I guess, mid to early 40s then, and I had to go back and do the thing that I did when I was 21. For someone whose identity was so wrapped up in their career, God knew how to humble me. I went back to banking. Uh, I was working with people half my age, fresh out of university. Those were my peers. It was humbling, but you know what? It definitely opened up my perspective, and I definitely learned a lot from that. I was introduced to Hungry for Life by, again, Mark Hutchinson back at one of your first galas. Probably goes back to 2008, I would say. Um, we went every year, Glenda and I. We began to support staff, began to really get involved with what HFL was doing, and love what HFL stood for. Dave asked me to join the board. I was thrilled to do that. I was becoming more and more sucked in, more and more drawn in. Uh, Missions had never been on the radar screen for me, honestly. I just felt that people who were passionate about that did that kind of stuff, and my job was to be able to support it. And that was okay. And then Dave took me to Kenya and Uganda. Um, it was the first time I'd ever seen poverty. I was so out of my comfort zone. But you know what? Being out of my comfort zone, that's what I thrive on. That's good for me. It's where I perform my best. So I was really able just to kind of soak it all in. I didn't come away with there with a sense of despair or a sense of hopelessness. I came away with a sense of energy and a sense of uh, just like we got to grow this, man. Like we got to do more. And at that time, I was really confused about what my purpose was because I wasn't that not that far away from my whistleblower experience. I knew I had this passion for justice, and because of what I'd seen, my spiritual poverty was just laid wide open in front of me. I knew I had to be more involved, but there was a problem. To be more involved, I had to go out and raise support. I could never see myself doing that. That was just it's mostly and it's pride mostly. Like how could I do that? But I also knew what was even stronger than my sense of pride was that if I didn't do this, I could never stand in front of the king and say I gave it all. If I failed, fine, you fail. But at least I didn't at least I didn't at least I tried. The last thing I want to say was that I didn't even try. So off I went. God knew what he was doing. Took me about 18 months, but I did manage to raise support. Um, it seems like my growth and maturity as a Christian um, has always been a process of tearing down and building up. Yeah, it's always been a process of tearing down and building up. I've gone from actually, a pretty selfish person to where I now see people as people, not as a means to an end. Uh, God has used my life experiences to kind of smooth off the rough edges and revealed that love is what matters. But he's still maintained the core of who he created me to be through that process. And I know he's not done with me yet. Why do I know that? Because it's well, because I'm still here. That's how I know that. Sorry. July 2018. So go back just over a year and a half. I made an appointment with my doctor just because I wasn't feeling good. Felt like maybe I had a stomach ulcer. My appointment was not until late August because that's our medical system here. But the pain was getting worse. So the long weekend in August 2018, I went to emergency and they examined me and sent me home with instructions that if this pain persists, to come back. Well, we had a family camping trip planned with the family. We went away camping at Maple Lake. Tyler joined us from Vancouver. Justin and Susie joined us from Calgary. Maple Lake was kind of halfway. It was an amazing vacation we had, one of the best family vacations ever. And but I was getting sicker. By now, I was starting to turn yellow. Um, Something was wrong with me. I had a low-grade fever. I just couldn't shake. I remember lying in a hammock I had set up out in the trees. I was, I knew I was seriously ill. I wasn't admitting it, but I knew I was. Funny thing is that Glenda and I were talking about this the other day. At that very moment I was doing that, she was in the trailer trying to hold it together because she knew the same thing. It's funny how you know. So when we got home, I went to emergency. I started to exhibit many other symptoms. Doctors did a CT scan. We waited in emergency, but when he came back, we could just see on his face that something was wrong. They said I had a mass in my stomach, but they didn't know what it was. So they admitted me into hospital. After many tests, and I'm talking about 2 weeks of tests here, uh, they finally got a diagnosis. Uh, yeah, they finally got a diagnosis. It was so what I had was peripheral T cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a long name for a very rare but aggressive cancer. And it was growing. By now the mass. So this is 2 weeks, and the mass was really growing rapidly, causing problems with all my organs. Now my kidneys, my liver, my pancreas, my digestive system. So they transferred me into Vancouver, and while they began to try to deal with what was happening with my organs, they started to do treatment on cancer. So I started to receive chemo. It's funny, it's not the cancer that kills you, it's all the complications that it brings. It's all the havoc that it wreaks in your body that this is what causes you not to survive it. So over the next 18 months, I would spend close to a year in hospital. Um, Between Chilliwack, Abbotsford, and Vancouver, it was I spent a year over a year in hospital. The cancer had wrapped itself around my duodenum and pancreas, so uh, it had cut off my liver function, cut off function of my kidneys, cut off my ability to digest food or even take food in. I lost a lot of weight. Uh, at one point, I was down over 80 pounds of body weight. So that's just under half of what I weighed. In an attempt to feed me, they inserted feeding tubes. When one type of chemo would stop working, they'd try a stronger one, but nothing seemed to work. Um, the tumor was not shrinking. I was getting weaker and weaker. And this all happened fairly quickly. Like we're talking from the date they diagnosed me was September 18th, I believe, 2018, or September 21st. By December, um, my oncologist politely advised me that we need to get our affairs in order. There was just nothing more that they could do for me. So in 4 months, I had gone from an active, fairly active, middle-aged, healthy guy to someone who was palliative. I think as Christians, we have to lay it all down and surrender everything to Jesus. I thought I had completely died to myself. Yet it wasn't until this time that I realized that there's another level to this. God has been merciful in my life to kind of help me lay it down in stages when I was ready. I didn't consciously realize that that's what was happening, but I did. But I soon did realize that when you're at the end. Um, but laying it down comes with that comes such an incredible peace. Like I can't describe it to you. Uh, I know you'll experience it sometime in your life if you haven't already now. But there is such a peace, just a totally surrendering your life. I was always amazed at how many people were praying for me. There's so much power in prayer. When Glenda and I could physically and emotionally take no more, we were sustained. It's like you could feel the hands. This is legit. You could feel the hands of people supporting you. It's kind of reminds me, like, you know, years ago at a rock concert or something, somebody would jump off the stage into the pit and people would carry them. I imagine that's what this felt like to us. We were just done. We just felt like there were hands underneath of us supporting us. Weird, true though. So, anyways, here we were waiting for a miracle, and it just so happens like my duodenum perforated, so it tore. This was not a good thing. It's pretty dangerous because you obviously, uh, you don't want stuff from your digestive system going into your body. I stood a really high chance of becoming septic. So the only solution that was left was to operate. The surgery I needed was risky and complicated. My surgeon, however, was a bit of a maverick. He loved the challenge of complicated cases. They moved me into Vancouver General in March of 2019. He came in to see me, and because of my weakened body condition, as soon as he saw me, he said, "There's no way you're going to survive this." He said, "I can't do the surgery." I was just devastated. So he said he was going to give me 2 weeks to build up my body condition. And so they put me on a intravenous diet. Literally, they fed me through tubes going through my arteries. I managed to put on 10 pounds in 2 weeks in that, which surprised everybody because I would just been nothing but they had me on this stuff before, but I lost weight. Anyways, I got strong enough where he decided he would do the surgery. Surgery consisted of removing my duodenum, the tumor itself, my gallbladder, my pylorus, which is the lower part of your stomach, part of my pancreas, and then reattaching your stomach and your liver back to what was left of your small intestine. Uh, it was over 8 hours long. Like it was a complicated surgery, but it saved my life. I spent a month in hospital recovering from that. I had over 25 tubes sticking out of me, drains and all kinds of things. One of the surgeons told me that other than brain surgery, it's the most complicated radical surgery that they do there. Or so I'm told anyways. And and it's amazing because I have hardly any side effects now. I have to take special pills when I eat to help me digest. I'm now experiencing some diabetic symptoms, which is natural when they remove half of your pancreas. But other than that, I'm pretty good. I was discharged back in May, and we spent the summer building strength for the next major hurdle, which was a stem cell transplant. My cancer that I had is known for being aggressive and for coming back. I've never looked up the survival rates or anything like that just because it wasn't important to me. It is what it is, right? But from what people have told me, the survival rates are it's pretty low. Uh, so the doctors felt that I needed some more help, and my best chance for survival, even though I was declared cancer free at that time, is that they needed to basically kill off every growing cell in my body and rebuild my immunity from scratch. So to do this, they harvest stem cells from a donor, or in my case, they were able to use my own, and I received a stem cell transplant. So this is now October last fall. Starts off with you receive a really, really strong chemo. I mean, I had strong chemo before, but this, my doctor said, this is 10 times worse than what you had before. It's just to the point where you're not going to die. Um, and it was intended to kill every growing cell in my body. I mean, I felt it. This one I really felt. So I received this treatment. Was in hospital for another 6 weeks, recovering while they monitored me, and yeah, I was released in November of 2019. I'm still recovering. Still be recovering for at least another year. I still have some complications to do with my liver and stuff that we're working through right now, which is why I haven't been able to come back to work. Um, I spent last week in hospital in VGH, but because of these complications, but we're moving forward, and they found solutions last week, and I got another small procedure to go through, and they can fix things there. So, man, like I can't believe when I was going through this, I was like, holy cow, I can't believe all the stuff that's happened in the last year and a half medically, and yet here I am. So I'm considered cancer free. Praise God. Like, uh, and it only does more to this just convinces me even more that my work here on earth is not done. Um, and I just pray that my experience and what's happened can be used for God's glory. There's a few things I just want to leave you with that have been kind of lessons for me and Glenda uh, over the last while, but in particular, yeah, over life, but in particular over the last while. The first thing is like follow your passions. God has given like each one of you talents, abilities, and a passion for something. Understanding what that is key to living out your purpose. Just like do it. This is what life is for. Live out follow your passions. We've learned how powerful prayer is. Um, I'm convinced that I'm here because people prayed. People from all over the world that I've never even met prayed. Uh, to gain life, you got to give it up. There's no doubt about that. You have to give yourself over to Jesus. God has an amazing journey in store for each one of us, but you got to let go of control. And you know what? When you do, it's just, life can be a great adventure. I wish I would have known this 30 years ago instead of trying to control everything and manipulate situations. Doesn't matter what other people think. That used to be pretty important to me. This is your life and your journey. All that matters is your faith and your family. Life is not going to go as planned. Besides, it'd be boring if it did. So, yeah, all of this leads to one thing, and that's the most important thing of all, and that's just to love. Just love the people around you. Love those who are hurting. Just love. So that's my story so far. And those are the things that God's been teaching me. So I hope that's been of some interest to you, and I hope that maybe there's something in there that God can use. If not, it's been a good opportunity for me to kind of collect my thoughts and and be able to share them. So thank you very much.